Awesome. Well, a huge welcome to our Hour of Power today. I'm very excited about this beautiful lady who's actually going to be sharing with us. Actually, I'll get you, Gracie, turn off your camera so that, or turn on your camera so that we can actually get to see your beautiful face. There you are. Look at you. In fact, she's just sitting across from me. Hey! And that, so it's exciting actually. Very rarely do I have the Hour of Power person in the office with me, so we thought we'd have a little bit of fun with it. But I want to tell you a little bit about Grace. I've known Grace now for a number of years, and she's just been a huge blessing to my life. But there's so much more that we actually don't know about Gracie. So Grace McLean, I'm going to give you the official version of what it is. And let's just have a little look here. She's moving my office around as we speak. Grace McLean has learned the art of self-management and balancing the seasons of life through her journey of ministry in Hollywood at 23. First day of work happened to be September of 11. 10 years as a fundraising, established regional fundraising and establishing regional fundraising offices. And in the past 3 years, setting up her own successful business, NFP Connect. In this Hour of Power, you're going to hear how Grace is going to identify blocks that were stopping her from moving forward and learn to manage herself through the chaos of an ever-changing world. How many of us know exactly what that's like? Life constantly on the change, and how do we actually cope through there? You're going to learn how to quiet the noise of expectation to ensure you can continue to build yourself and your business sustainably for the journey that is set before you. And I know that I've walked this journey of life with Grace now for probably about, I don't know, I think it's about 7 years maybe, yeah. And that it's all gone really, really quickly. And watch the journey that she's been on, and we've supported one another through that journey as well. And so I know that she's got some amazing resources and gifts that are actually going to be able to speak into many of your lives today. Just for your reference, and we will be talking about this at the end, but she is also the creator of our beautiful planners. Those of you who have already got them, they are awesome. We'll be going through some of that as well. Juice Plus on the front, Nutrition Plus on the bottom. You got to stay right till the end, because we've actually got a special offer to share with you around those planners. You're not going to want to miss it, so make sure that you stay. So beautiful, Grace. I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to actually make you, let's have a little look here. I'm going to spotlight you in the first instance, and then I'm actually going to, I know you're going to share a, here, I'm going to spotlight you, and I think you're going to be able to share your screen as well.
Yeah, okay.
So letting you share your screen?
Share my screen too. Okay, so I've never done this before, so that's why I have Celine right next to me, so we may or may not go well.
Yeah, you see where the one where you can see your thing there?
Whiteboard?
Yeah, you see where you can see your PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Just there, just click on that, and then just go aloud.
Oh, there we are. That's awesome. So you bear with me. There you go. So you can see my screen, which is really exciting. So thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Celine. As they said, Celine is one of my godmothers. So I once prayed to God to get, I had numerous people in my life, and I said, Lord, I just want a businesswoman that I can look up to and admire, that's in a good relationship, good family, and that's does really well in business and has all of the front. And I didn't get one, I got 4. So, there is that thing of, if you ask, you shall receive. So I'm super blessed to be part of the family, even if it's by adoption. But yeah, I am, and I'm really lucky. And part of if you think about the planner, and if any of you have got the planner is, you don't do those things lightly. And I was actually down at Peter and Louise's holiday house when I wrote most of the planner. So that's another little thing that you don't know about. I escaped. So super excited to be here, and I thank you to everyone who's arrived today, but everyone who's going to listen in later. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story, which Celine did. Oops, I'll get in trouble. Celine did talk about a little bit. My journey starts probably when I was a Christian. When I was 19 years old, I became a Christian. And then I really kind of zooped, when something really is in line with where you're meant to be, you project forward. And so this was one of those times where I, in a really short period of time, my life just projected in this place of where I'm supposed to be. And at 19, I became a Christian. And then by 23, I got an opportunity to go to Hollywood, California as a missionary for a church. And my thing was I needed mentoring and I needed support. And then and what he wanted was the pastor at Hollywood wanted someone to kind of sorry, people are waving at each other. I get really distracted. This is why I have a great plan. And so there's people.
Lenny is making faces.
Peter's like, here's Peter. Here you go. So sorry, squirrel. This is going to be all out chaos. So get back to it. So Hollywood arrived, took on the position. I was all about mentoring, getting support. He wanted to hold concerts in the car park of the Hollywood. If you've ever been to Hollywood, it's the corner of the Hollywood Boulevard and the 101. I grew up in the entertainment industry, so there was this great sort of little connection thing. And then first day of work was September 11. And when I got to the church, we'd found out on the way to the church that the Twin Towers had been hit. And then when I got to the church, the pastor that said that he would mentor me decided that when I got there that I was a welcomed relief, and sort of said to me, look, I've been suffering from depression, having suicidal tendencies. I really appreciate you being here. Here's my church. You can go look after it now. So it was a real blow for me as a young person. And I kind of got a bit depressed and had a bit of a, I didn't get a bit depressed. I got actually a lot depressed. And it was one of those moments where I realized if you don't look after yourself in whatever it is that you're passionate about and want to do, no one is going to look after you. And so you will continue to crash. And I've had a few crashes since then, but never as bad as that. But you will continue to crash until you learn the lesson of not crashing. And that's about you looking after yourself. So it's really around, if you want to set goals and you want to plan for things, what stops you from doing that? Because what we do is we set all these goals for ourselves and then we kind of get overwhelmed and we crash. And why is that happening? So when I came back from Hollywood, I found this quote, which is, life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And that was so significant for me, because it was like, okay, well, now that this has happened, I can't change it. And it really was a core shifting break for me, but where do I want to go next? So I spent a year just doing nothing much, just working at KPMG, an accounting firm. And then I went on to work for not-for-profit. So I worked at Canteen and did National Bandana Day, then for Leukemia Foundation, and set up the office here in Newcastle for the Hunter division. So they had the service, but they didn't have PR and marketing and fundraising. And then I went on to set up the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children here in the Hunter. So they had the preschool and the early intervention, but they didn't have the rest of the PR and marketing and corporate relationships and donors. And so when I was at Royal Institute, I got a coach pro bono that, someone similar to, not as cool as Celine, but someone similar to like Celine, who just inspires you and keeps you accountable. And that was really instrumental in the success of my role and what I was doing. And so in a short amount of time that I was at Royal Institute, I'd been in not-for-profit by this stage for 7 years. In 3 years, I had managed through the coaching and through the support, and he gave it to me pro bono, to raise over $3.8 million for the organisation that I was working with. And I realised that this was pretty powerful in, if I could on that theme of structuring yourself, if you can structure yourself when then there's chaos around you, you've got a lot more room for miracles in your life, because you've planned for things that you know that are always going to happen. And usually what we do is we're always surprised at this thing that happened the same day that it happened yesterday, but we don't know why we're surprised, which feeds into my next, I'm a bit ahead of myself. It feeds into my next quote, which I'll get to you. But what I want to, and this is a pure example of what I mean by here, is I can say, how are you? And you can all say, fine. And then I'll say, but how's your head? And you're all thinking, it's probably a little full. How's your heart? And it depends on where you're at. It could be full, it could be empty, it could be broken, it could be, strained. How's your relationships? There could be some that are working and some that aren't. How's your finances? Well, you might be awesome because you're juice flussing all the way and it's like kicking goals and it's fabulous, but there could be some things that you really want to do. And then how's your body? And you're like, oh, no, don't want to talk about that. And so, when I can say, how are you? And you're fine. But when I break those things down, it can be a completely different story. And so what that means is that you've got a whole bunch of bags that you're carrying behind you that you don't really know that you're carrying because you're just fine. And so what we want to do is make sure that we, little by little, not all at once, because we try and lift everything all at once, and we get overwhelmed, and that's when we shut down and we have physical reactions to those things. But we want to just break things down bit by bit. So you want to look at your head and how do you fix that? Look at your heart and how do you fix that? You know, and so break each little bit down. And so it becomes more manageable. And that's the importance of goal setting, is how do you manage the seasons of the life that you're in? Life happens in seasons. You might be single. I'm single. I get to do whatever I want when I want. I have 2 p.m. nana naps most days. That's easy for me. I don't have kids. I work my butt off, and I might start at 6 in the morning and finish at 7 or 8 at night. And you might do that too, but you might not be able to do those sorts of things. And so what season are you in to what you need to, and how fast you can deal with all the parts of your life that you want to kind of work on and fix. So this was the quote that I was trying to get to you. So every day we come to the new thing and we're like, oh yeah, we did this yesterday. Why are we still doing it? So insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. So today is really about showing you how to stop the insanity, or how to create new results. And then being okay with where you're at and knowing that you actually are accomplishing things, and you don't know that you're accomplishing things because you're always looking at the things that you're not accomplishing. I'm going to say that again. You're always looking at the things that you're not accomplishing, and you're not looking at the things that you have accomplished. And so what I want to do today is show you all the things that to just be kind to yourself in knowing, you know, you might not have done what you thought you would set out to do, but you did some other things, and that's okay for the season that you're in, and that's what might be needed. And so do that. So the power of habits, and this is really, really important. When you woke up this morning, you did certain things. You might have first thing you did, you might have looked at your phone, or you might have gone to the bathroom, or you might have had a shower, or you might have done your meditation. Or the kids might have woken you up, and there's certain things that you do every day, and you generally do the same thing. So as soon as you get to work, or you've dropped off the kids and you get home, I don't know, it's raining, pouring here, so everyone's day probably is mucked up in Newcastle. But if you're in a sunny, you know, you have a pattern in which you do things. You might have gone for a run. So in the book, The Power of Habits, Charles Duhigg says 40% of everything that we do each day is a habit. That's crazy. And this is what I want to talk to you about, is that if 40% of everything that you do is a habit, then that means that if life isn't working for you, chances are that you've created habits around it. And some of them aren't your habits. This is one thing that we don't think about. Some of them could be habits that our parents taught us. So for example, get to the end of the day and you've had a massive day and you get a glass of wine out of the fridge. Or you get a bottle out and you have a glass, but you have a glass of wine at the end of the day, or a beer, or whatever it is that you want to do. And that's a habit that you maybe saw your parents do. And so sometimes we have habits that we don't know we're having. Now, I heard someone before saying that you're driving. Now, you can drive because you've created the habit to learn how to drive and not think about how you're driving. But when you first learned to drive, you were like indicator, rear view vision mirror, seatbelt, fast, slow, all those sorts of things. And so your brain was creating the neuron pathways to work out how to do something. And so in The Power of Habits, he said 40% of everything we do. So we have this natural process into the way that we automatically work. So there's a cue, which is this picture here. So you wake up, you might be tired. You're like, I need coffee. You go and get a coffee. And then the reward is, I feel better about my coffee because I've got my coffee. However, it's like you've had the coffee and then 4.57 seconds, you realize you're still tired and you need to go again, but that's enough. There's this cue and certain pattern. And so how do we change those, or how do we look at those or notice those patterns to then change them? And that's what we want to do. And we don't want to change everything at once. I need to absolutely stress that. We just want to change little bits at a time. So just be mindful that when you're trying to create new pathways, it's just that one thing at a time. So you've got to be kind to yourself. So your habits are a way of your brain, training your brain to behave automatically. This is really, really, when I learned this, I was like, what? Because you just kind of realize all the things are wrong, but then you also see how your brain does and reacts to things. So our body is made up of 2% body mass. Our brain is made up of 2% of our body mass, but 20% of our energy, we use 20% of our energy learning new information. So you know how when Celine tells you to do something and you don't want to do it and you're like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to call 30 people or one person a day, whatever it is. I know there's lots of different things that she does, but she often does that to me. So here's what's happening. Your brain is going, this is new information. I don't know how to compute. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to do it. Or when you're, and so and it uses up a lot of energy. So it's not just, when you're trying to learn a new habit, it's not just about learning that new habit. So Tony Robbins says that generally by January 15th, you give up on all your New Year's resolutions. Because on December 31st, and as I said before, you set up all these new Year's resolutions on how you're going to sort your life out and create a new thing. And it's going to be, your new year is going to be amazing. And then January 1st, 15th comes along and everything's gone out the window. It's because you've tried to do too much all at once. And then you feel like a failure. And so sometimes we get to a point where we don't set goals at all because we feel like we're just going to fail at them anyway. So we just want to try. So this is really around teaching you around what your brain's doing, what your body's doing, and how do you then create the necessary changes and be nice to yourself to do that. Cool information. Does anyone have any questions?
I've got the little chat down here, so no one at this point in time.
Okay, we're good.
So yes,
Awesome.
Put your questions in there and I'll make sure that Grace gets them.
Okay, so here's what's happening. So your brain is in the reptilian. So can they see me as well, or they can only see the presentation?
Well, they can see you as well.
Oh, cool. I was just checking. I just thought I was better not make too many faces. I'm very if you can see me as well, you can see that I'm very animated in what I do. So we've got the reptilian brain, which is the amygdala, or is it the back of your head? And then you've got your prefrontal cortex. So in his book, 18 Minutes, and this is a really great book with some really great insights if you want to get it, Peter Bregman. So in his book, 18 Minutes, he talks about his daughter and him are swimming in a pool, and he's the alligator, and she's running away from her. He's about to get on top of her and like bite her. And then she goes, stop, wait. And then she looks around and then she finds an escape route. And Peter Bregman sort of stops for a minute and says, what did she just do? And so he goes to his neuroscientist friend and he explained the situation and what happened in the pool. And he said, can you please tell me what my daughter did? This is what happened. He's like, oh, that's easy. She was trying to move from one place to another. So you've got your amygdala, and you've got your prefrontal cortex. Your amygdala and your reptilian brain is where your habits live. That's where your brain wants to live. Where you've got your prefrontal cortex is where your thinking brain is where your rational thinking lives. So whenever you're trying to learn new information, you often will tap your head or put your hand on your head and go, what is it? What is it? That's an actual physical action of you trying to engage your prefrontal cortex. Like this. You're like, tick, 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 come on, wake up, wake up. So when you're living out of here, this is where we naturally work out. So when you're driving a car, when you have an automatic reaction to something, you're working out of your amygdala, which is your reptilian brain, which is your habits. So in the book, he says, well, how long does it take to move from the back to the end? So guess how long it is? Can anyone guess? It's not 18 minutes.
Guessing, come on.
Any guesses?
Type in there to see who can guess. What's your guess? 5. Good. We've got 5 seconds.
5 seconds. Yeah. So there's an event. You have a reaction to that event, and then there's an outcome to your reaction. So it takes 3 seconds or 5 seconds, 3 seconds to move from your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. So you have an event, you react, that's how long it takes, but it takes 1 breath. So the opposite of that is there's an event, you breathe, you think about the reaction that you want to have or the outcome that you want to have, and then you react accordingly. Can you see how powerful this is and how much you would have saved yourself over the last 20, 30, 40 years of yelling and having fights if you knew this information? So you will naturally react to whatever it is, the event. So husband hasn't taken out the rubbish, or wife hasn't taken out the rubbish, whichever one takes out the rubbish. Kids have painted all over the wall. Someone sends you an SMS, you smash back, like automatically come back and press send, all that sort of stuff. As soon as you've had your reaction, you feel guilty. Because once you've had your reaction and exerted the energy you needed and taken that breath using that reaction, your prefrontal cortex has kicked in and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Has anyone sent a really bad email or a bad SMS? Yep.
Yeah.
I can hear you all saying, I can't hear you, but I can hear you.
Totally yes. I'm getting LOL. Totally yes.
Yeah. So basically what's happened is you've worked out of your amygdala, and then your prefrontal cortex is kicked in and gone, maybe I shouldn't have reacted that bad. But what you now know is that you can actually stop that within 3 to 5 seconds. So Google has a retraction. Gmail apparently has a retraction that allows you to retract the email within 5 seconds of you pressing send, because it knows that your brain does that.
Very useful.
Very useful. So, but now that you know that that's what your brain does, and it's not going to change overnight, but what it does now mean is that you actually have the ability to turn around and even if you do react, because you'll get into the habit of not reacting as much, even if you do react, you actually can then go back and go, look, you know what, you can acknowledge the reaction and go, look, I'm really sorry. I see that this has happened. I shouldn't have acted that way. I'll do better next time. So you're still going to react in some circumstances, and we all do, because we get triggered by certain things. And the reaction really is from our like reptilian caveman days of fight or flight. So we still, and you would hear this in all of your things, we're still very much working out of that space, but we just don't have that need to run, and we're not dying when, you know, someone sends that bad message. We're not actually like, you know, you've got to get KFC for dinner and you forgot to pick it up, and, you know, they've yelled at you and you're like, you're not dying. Like, you know, that's a really bad example, but, you know, something's happened. Sorry.
Yes, because we don't eat KFC.
We don't eat KFC. Whatever. Okay, so here's another really cool thing. We only have a certain amount of battery power, willpower, in each and every day. It's like a battery. Our willpower is like a battery every day. So going back to that Tony Robbins 15th of January, you start using up, as soon as you wake up, you start using your willpower. It might be to get up to have exercise. It might be to, as long as it's not a habit. So that's why you get things into habit, because it doesn't use willpower, because it's an automatic. But anything that you have to think about and start creating new neuron pathways for, you're using willpower. And so that exercise that you're trying to do, you know, in the morning you get up and you might do this, you're going to like burn off all the 10, 15 kilos or whatever that you made over Christmas. And you start doing it, and, you know, day 1, it's really great and you're really awesome. Day 2, you know, and then you get to day 3, and then 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you start eating into chocolate like this cake, because you've run out of willpower. And here's what happens is, when, especially if you're working full time, you're using all your willpower to make decisions at work, and therefore you've got none at home. And that's where that automatic reaction kicks in at home, and why we can kind of get cranky. So being mindful that you've only got that battery life of willpower each day, especially when you're trying to learn new information, and that 20% of the energy. So, you know, when you're learning new information and it's taking up 20% of your energy, you're going to be using up a lot of your willpower on new information until you create the new neuron pathways for it to become a habit. So that's why it's really important to just kind of go slowly in. And if you stuff up, then you go again the next day. Stuff up, go again the next day. Don't just go, oh, I can't do it. Because that's where we kind of give up on ourselves, where it's like, you've got to just keep going, because it's like, in 3 years time, this is what I want my life to look like. And then in 3 years time, if you just keep trying and keep trying, you'll start again, you'll start creating that real strong neural pathway. And so that's just being mindful that you just be nice to yourself is really what I'm trying to say. Do you start your day, or does your day start for you? So I put this picture in because, especially with the waking up in the morning and the first thing that you do in the morning, if the first thing that you do is pick up your phone and check your emails and all that sort of stuff, your day is starting for you. And that's where you've got to be mindful of, you'll kick into chaos and you'll start working more out of your amygdala than your prefrontal cortex. Then if you plan your day first and then work out how you need to accomplish things, if that makes sense. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I had a habit, because this reminded me of an old habit that I had, around that my phone would actually be on the bedside table. Yeah. And so it was the first thing that I would do. Yeah. And then you got caught up in other people's agenda for your day instead of your agenda for your day.
Yeah. Especially even if you're looking on Facebook, and that's one of the other things. So my phone isn't in my bedroom. I feel Wi-Fi. I don't know, I might be making it up, but I feel like I feel Wi-Fi, so it doesn't sit in my room because it makes me anxious. But I actually go up, I set the alarm and I go up and get it and bring it back into my bed the next morning. But it's not the last thing that I'm looking at before I go to bed, because bad for your brain, and it's not the first thing that I look at. So when I wake up, I'm kind of thinking about, okay, what do I want my intentions to be today, and what do I want to think about? I might do a little bit of yoga. But if you're looking at Facebook and all that sort of stuff, and if you're not feeling the best that you want to feel, and you're looking at Facebook and looking at what everyone else is doing and they look all fabulous and you're not feeling that, that's a really bad way to start your day, because you just already automatically setting yourself up to feel less than, as opposed to starting your day and getting into a really good routine and habit of making yourself feel good, and then going, oh yeah, you know what, they might be doing fine, but you don't, you're not trying to, oh, they're all doing amazing and therefore my life's going to be crap. So therefore it's going to be crap.
You're not buying into their highlight reel.
Yeah,
because we know that basically what we see on Facebook for the most part, guys, is the highlight reel of someone's life. So you're not buying into their highlight reel. You're actually getting to create your own.
Yeah.
And putting some things in place. It was one of the most powerful things I did, was actually moving that out, because now instead of that I will go straight into my prayer meditation.
Yeah.
Before
there's no room for mobiles if you want sexy time. And you probably have your mobile so you don't have to have sexy time, but you need to take your mobile out of your room. Have a headache. But just, you know, like it's becoming one of the biggest connectors and disconnectors of our time. And it can make us feel extremely powerful if people like us, and extremely unpowerful if people aren't paying attention or we look at other people's things. So just being mindful that that's not the greatest way. Your value doesn't come from it, and yet we hope that it, you know, for some reason we're trying to get that value from there, and recognition, and we want recognition, and the only place that recognition can come from is in ourselves. And I say that, you know, Celine pulled me through a lot of times, and Louise and Peter, of pulling through of what's my self-value and where does my value come from, and I've been going through a journey of where does that come from, and having to pull it out of myself, because even if you, and this is totally off the topic, but people can tell you how wonderful you are, but if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. And so I want you to just really be mindful of finding that value within yourself for yourself, because you could be creating habits or you know, words around yourself that aren't beneficial to you, and so you've got to put that value in. Going back to the amygdala, and this is still all in that, obviously it's all the same thing, is that we have any one of three responses when we set out of our habits. So it'll be when we're coming out of our amygdala, it's fear, fears and blocks. So our fight, our flight, or our paralysis. If I get overwhelmed, I shut down and have nana naps. Like I will literally go away for 20 minutes and go and have a sleep and then come back and rejuvenate. I know my body does that, and I allow my body, and I have the ability to do that. But if you don't know what your body's doing, you don't know how to stop it or reflect on it or calm yourself down. So going back to that fight flight stuff, when you have an automatic reaction, it's coming out of one of these spaces, and you'll do one of these things if you're in a fearful place, if you're feeling out of your depth or afraid. And so being mindful of any of these responses, and you know, your partners do it, everyone does it, kids do it. Your kids will automatically react. They'll like lose it and trample or go into the room or hide under a cover, and you watch them have their automatic response. And it's any one of these three responses: fight, flight, or paralysis. So being mindful that you actually do that. So when Celine tells you to do something that you don't want to do, you'll do one of these two things. And then when you're in that space, you've got to be mindful that you are doing it. Pull yourself into your prefrontal cortex, your thinking, rational brain, and talk yourself through why you're responding to that, and pull yourself out of it. And you know, it could be really long stems things that might have triggered you from like 20 years ago, and you don't know why you're doing it, but it's like trying to pull yourself out of that. So and you're responsible for your reactions. You can blame anyone else you want, but at the end of the day, you know, when you're 90 years old and eating creamed corn out of a tin from the nursing home that you might be in, no, you're not going to be in a nursing home, but you know, the way that you reacted and the things that you think about, because you've only got time to think back then, is going to be how you reacted and what you did. And there's some beautiful quotes around that. You know, people don't remember you for how you, what was it?
Or what you said, but how you made you feel.
Yeah, what you said, but how you made you feel. See, that's why I have it on tap. It's awesome. And you can't reach for anything new if your hands are full of yesterday's junk.
Amen.
So pulling out all the things that you know, and I think this is the next one, how to blossom. So there's a, and I'll send you through the links, and I hope it's still there. But Darren Daly, a couple of last week, I think it was, had the blossom. So with a flower, he said that a flower like a rose bush plants all, like, grows all these rose buds, but you need to be able to cut them, trim them. So you can only have so many rose buds. And so you need to know how to trim the rose buds that aren't serving you. Trim the like, I think it's 2/3 of the rose bush needs to be trimmed, and the buds need to be trimmed off so that the flowers that remain there can grow to the full potential. Because if you try and let the rose, if you just let it go, the whole branch, the whole rose bush will die. And so you've got to be able to trim your life, trim, certain aspects of the things that aren't serving you, actually acknowledge the things that aren't serving you, and trimming those back. And so that's what that sort of, pull out yesterday's junk, look at what is and what isn't. And when you go through the planner, you can see there's lots of different options to do that. But it's like, okay, well, yeah, you know what, that's not serving you. And it's a really great idea to just do a brain dump of all the things that, you do in your life, and all the people. Like, you can trim friends, you can trim Facebook, you can trim lots of different things, but your wardrobe. So cluttering out things so that you can have room for the true things for your purpose to happen. And I'll send you that clip, because I'm not very good at.
It's powerful though, because it's one of the areas in which you know yourself, and you've done just a clean out, whether it's your desk, whether it's your wardrobe, whatever. It comes back down. Many of you would have heard me speaking before about doing that time audit, where you actually really identify what truly is going on in your life. What are you really doing rather than what you think you're doing? Yeah. And then applying the do, delegate, dump, which I know that Grace has got a few other principles around that, but it's that simple, really. You are basically pruning the bush, because if you try to keep do you remember the story about the professor who had the jar and that? Oh, okay, alrighty, it's coming soon, and that. But that'll make it more sense, because that, when I heard that first years and years and years ago, that made it click for me. Actually, that was the most powerful one. So I'll shut up for a second. Okay.
Whether you think you can or think you can't, either way, you're right. As I said, you are responsible, and the power of words, 80% of what we tell ourselves becomes reality. And so we've got to be really mindful of the words that we're trying to tell ourselves. And so the I ams, I am a bad mom, I'm a bad wife, I'm a bad husband, I'm bad finance, I'm a bad this, I'm a bad that. It could be things that someone else told you that you were when you were younger, that you carry on. So there are other things that you can cull, the words that you tell yourself. A really great exercise for the I ams and to pull you out of this is to put on your mirror, create the I ams that you want your life to look like. You don't have to necessarily, like when you say them, they're not necessarily going to gel until they do. For example, I got to 74 kilos. I'm not a gym person. I haven't really been a gym person. I'm getting better, but haven't really been a gym person. And I got to 74 kilos, and it was too big for me. And that's, that's just me. I ended up saying I'm 64 kilos. And for a year and a half, I just said, I'm 64 kilos, I'm 64 kilos, I'm 64. So whenever I looked at myself and I didn't like it, whenever I stepped on scales, I didn't like it, whenever I put on a dress and I was having a bad day, I would say I'm 64 kilos. In a year and a half later, without really doing anything, I did end up going to the gym, and my food did end up getting better, and a whole bunch of things sort of like rippled effect from that. I ended up being 65 kilos. And so the power of words and what you say really do dictate your life, and can stop you or can make you shine. So, yeah. Everything, fix everything. Look at Woody's face on this. I just need to, this is the thing that I think when we try and fix everything, and I said this before, is when it's trying to fix everything, it becomes too overwhelming. So it's just little bits at a time. So take one bit. What's the most important thing that you need to fix right now? What season are you in? What does that look like? What's the priority for this season? Because you'll go into a new season. And so don't feel like you have to fix everything. You just fix one bit at a time. And it might be your personal life first, because there might be something that's really, impending. In your heart of hearts and in your head, I'm saying stuff and something's coming up for you. So you know what it is. You just need to go forth and do that one thing, but just be gentle to yourself. And just breathe. because it's, that really is that stopping and breathing in 3 seconds gives you that rational thinking and gives you that, if you're spiritual, the word breath is raya, which is the Hebrew word, means spirit, means breath. And so God literally means raya. It's like your spirit, your breath, which is what keeps you alive, is raya, which is spirit and breath. So breathing is a really important part to reconnect you into who you are and what you are and what you believe, because that's the breath is where you get your identity from, is my belief. But that's, here you go, love, the rock story. So a professor's in a classroom and he's so a professor's in a classroom and he gets out a big rock and gets out a big jar, and he says, he puts a whole bunch of big rocks in, and he says, "Is the jar full?" And I'll send you the clip to this, because I'll send you a whole bunch of clips that you can watch that kind of accompany this webinar. And he says, "Is the jar full?" And the students all say yes. And then he gets some pebbles and he puts them in on top of the rocks, and they kind of form all the way through the jar. And then he says, "Is the glass full?" And they say yes. And then he gets some sand and he pours the sand all the way through, and the sand goes through the pebbles and through the rocks and fills up the jar. And then he says, "Is the glass full?" And they're like, yes. And then he grabs 2 beers and he pours the 2 beers in, and that fills in. You can have beers or water, but he pours the two beers in and he fills it all up. And he says, in life, the big rocks are the most important things. And sometimes when we're trying to look at other people and look at what other people are doing, we're not really focused on what we're doing and what's important to us. So I have a beautiful friend who wanted to start her own business, and she was working with me for a little while. And, she really wanted to start her own business, but she had her family, and she was kind of resenting her family a little bit, because she was like, "I just want to do this. My heart and soul is to go and start this business." And she was getting cranky at her husband, and she was getting cranky at her kids. And, when we drill down to the thing, it's like her most important thing is her family. And whilst this vision to just push forward and do this business and get that sorted, she had 2 baby kids, and this might not necessarily be the season, or it might be a slower season than what she's worked in before in pushing and pursuing her goals. And so it doesn't mean that you don't pursue your goals. It just might be, they might be a little slower because you've got a different focus. So as soon as she realized that it was her family that were her number 1 priority, everything kind of relaxed a bit, because she was then able to see that, well, my priority is my family, and I'm going to focus on that. And then the sand are the second important, the pebbles are the must-dos, the things that you need to, shopping and cars and roof and mortgages and all that sort of stuff, all those little things that are kind of really important as well. And then the sand are all the little bits that, that are important, but probably you could just get rid of. Now, if you put the sand in first, you're not going to have pebbles, rocks. You might get beer, but, you'd probably need beer because you are ignoring everyone else and the important things. Or you could use if you put the pebbles in, the big rocks don't fit in. So you've got to be mindful to put the big rocks in first and set those things up. And so just like your big rocks are your values and your strength, like the things that are so important to you. And there's a few examples in that of what, your big rocks might be that make you feel valuable and worth. And work could be one of those things. It doesn't mean that it's not, but it's just saying that those things are the shop and the food and the sleep, just making sure that those things are in. So now we're going to get to the practical. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
No questions at the moment.
Awesome. Okay, so we're on the home stretch, and I just want to give you some ideas about goal setting. So that each week you've got certain things, and this is where your big rocks kick into play. So this is a weekly plan. So in the planner, there's a dream week that you can set your week out of all the things that are important. Now, mums, I'm going to have a word to all the mums. There's 168 hours in a work week, and yet you can't seem to find 2 for yourself. So I just want to be mindful that you need to find that time where you can really find an hour out of 168 or 2 hours in a week out of 168, all working, all home dads, whatever, you know, busy people. Anyway, busy people, where you can find 2 hours for yourself a week. And one of the things that is interesting that I find is when I talk to mums in the planning stuff, that they're happy to take on someone else's children, but you never ask to lend yours out. So there's another busy mum out there that would love a couple of hours to herself. So find a mum that's similar to you, that, you know, you like, the kids like each other, and do a kid swap. So every once a week or every fortnight, you hand over your kids to them, and then they hand over their kids to you, and you both get that time away. But being mindful and just being conscious that you can say, you know, that you're taking them on. Yeah, sure. If someone else asks you, yeah, sure, I'll take your kids, but you're not asking them. Why? Just do it. Or ask Celine if she's around, because she loves them. Just kidding. So the big rocks are the big important things. And the importance of planning is that when you plan, you've got room for miracles, and there's no surprises. And so you've got to think, you know, as I said before, that it's putting in those little things that you need to do, that you want to accomplish each and every week, that you know that you've got to do, and then work around that. One of the issues that people have with using their phone when they're using their calendar is that you'll go to Thursday 2 o'clock. So someone will say to you, are you free Thursday 2 o'clock? And you'll look at your phone, you'll go to Thursday at 2 o'clock, and you'll go, yep, I'm free, that's sorted. The problem with that is you're not looking at your whole week. And so you're booking in every spare waking hour in the week because you're just looking at that point in time. Whereas if you actually looked at the whole week, you'd probably be mindful and go, you know what, I actually have got so much on that week, I just can't do it that week. So that's just a little tip to help you see that when you're booking in appointments, being mindful that you're not just booking in that time and that slot and only looking at that you look at your whole week on whether or not you can do things. Because in 3 weeks' time, you don't want your life, you want to have a more controlled life. And this is what it's all about. It's just having that more control. You control your life doesn't, your calendar doesn't control you, because that's when we feel overwhelmed, and you're responsible for it. Yeah, so I think that's it. So whenever you've got big goals, so I'm just going back to that. So just make sure you put your little things in, and then you can put your other things in around that. Because when you've got stuff slotted in and it's hidden in there, like it's put in there, you're like, and someone says to you, oh, can you do this? You're like, actually, no, I can't, because I've got, you can make it up if you don't feel like sports or piano or whatever. But, you know, it's just, you've got that time and that's yours, and you protect that time. So this is often the thing when we're looking at big goals, the big, hairy, audacious goals, and particularly because this is big, hairy and audacious, that beautiful monster. Is the big, hairy, audacious goals are overwhelming because you, in our minds, we in our minds, not you, we have this assumption of what we think is going to happen to actually what's going to happen when we actually accomplish or go through the steps to get to where we need to go. So there's you have this idea that you want to do, and then all this stuff pops up and tells you, oh no, you can't do that, oh no, this is going to happen. So your fight and flight kicks in. And so that's what you've got to be mindful of whenever something big or new comes in, is that your fight and flight will kick in, and your amygdala will go, nope, we can't do that. Oh my God, it's too good. We've never done that before. So they just become overwhelming and scary. And so how we diffuse the big, scary, audacious goals is to break them down into little bits to make them underwhelming. So setting a goal is the first step to turning the invisible into the visible. So you set your intentions, which are your big goals, but then how do you make them a reality? And so I'm a really big fan of the brain dump. If I'm ever feeling overwhelmed, I'll put all my computer stuff away, and I'll take a piece of paper and a pen, and I'll go to a computer, and I'll go to a cafe, or I'll go to another room with just paper and pencil and just brain dump and get everything out of whatever it is that I'm overwhelmed with it, whatever goal that I'm trying to get through, or all that sort of stuff. And it just sort of underwhelms you. It just kind of takes it away. So give you an example is that we are like a little Coke bottle. When we wake up in the morning and something stresses us out, it's like shaking the Coke bottle. And then as we go in the day, more stuff shakes and shakes and shakes, and like more stuff stresses us out. So we shake it again, it shakes again, more stuff stresses out, shakes again. And then we get to something that's so minute and someone says the smallest thing and we just lose it. And it's like the Coke bottle coming up and we just blow up because we haven't diffused all the information that's coming at us. And so we just get overwhelmed and we just explode. So just being mindful that we're all little Coke bottles, and as stress like impinges, the reason that we lose it at the smallest thing is because it's a whole bunch of little things that have come up. And that's the same that we feel about goals. If we feel like we could explode, but when we bring it down, we realize they're just little bubbles in the bottle. And if we lift the lid off, each little bubble has its own little purpose that we need to get through. That's a new one. I like that one. I like that analogy. Okay. So brain dump. So take a piece of paper out. Paper out's good. Use colors because that helps your brain with creativity, and it helps you underwhelm. And just take one step at a time. So in the planner, there's the 90-day, and this is what this is, and this is just a pure example, is the 90-day goal setting. So the plan is not dated. It starts when you do. And I specifically did that because everyone starts, life doesn't start on the 31st of January 31st of December every year, 1st of January. It starts whenever we're ready, and often things happen in our life that we want to kickstart. And so the plan is not dated specifically for that because it starts when you do, and you start so that you can start any day of the week, any week, and it begins. So with the 90-day goal, you set your big goal, you brain dump all the stuff that overwhelms you, all the things you can and can't do that you think you can't do, and then you break them down into little bite-sized pieces, and then you put a date, a due date, and who can help you with that. And then the bottom, it says who can support you. So that's another thing that you can, with your brain dumps, who can support you, who do you need to connect with to make that happen? And how do you, what do you need to learn? So that's really powerful. As I said before, it's like when you've got a big goal, you need to learn new stuff. And so being mindful, the energy levels and the energy levels and the willpower is depleting as you're learning new stuff. So just be gentle. With my planner, sometimes another thing is the reflection pitch, which I talked about, is you go back and reflect on the week, reflect on what you have done. If you're not feeling like you're accomplished what you want and set out to accomplish, go back and look at what you have done, because you'll actually see the pattern that you are getting closer to where you need to be, but you're just not there. And so you need to do those little things which you probably didn't know that you had to do to get to where you need to do. So, and there's accountability. So I'll often have an accountability partner, and I think you guys have got all that with the Juice Plus stuff, in that you've got accountability. But even if you've got someone in a different business, you can help each other and support each other, because you'd be learning things in what you're doing and what the Juice Plus offers, and other people in another business will have a different perspective on things, and they've got other things that they can contribute. So having accountability where you're like, we've got this big project I need to get done, can you and I sit in a room for a couple of hours and we'll both work out and help each other. And it's motivating when you've got other people, especially if you're working on your own. Having someone else in the room really is motivating to get stuff done. Minimize distractions. There's plenty of distractions that, as I said before, with the Peter in the window and the squirrel and all that sort of stuff. I asked Celine to look at the messages because I didn't need the distractions, because I get stuck and my brain goes everywhere. So, and I know that, and that's why I've set all these goals. I know that my brain, I didn't finish high school. I didn't go to university because when I was at school, the teachers used to say, Grace, shut up and sit in the corner. If you're not going to do anything, just shut up and sit in the corner. And that was because my brain was going a million miles an hour, that it wasn't, I wasn't too compact, like the confined learning. It wasn't my favorite learning space. So I needed to learn, and it's taken me nearly 40 years to learn, how do I learn and how do I create the distractionless life that I can get stuff done in the manner that my brain allows me to do. So, being mindful of all that. And, you think about those sorts of things where someone, when you were younger, told you that you weren't this and you weren't that. I also had to get over that, but it's just being appreciative of my brains. Turning off your notifications on your phone. My phone's constantly on silent. People hate me for it. But it just minimizes my distractions, so that I can get what I need to get done. I need my important things done. And then that's, and then this little thing, this no, is there anyone out there that doesn't like saying no? You say yes to everything. Anyone? I'm
sure there'll be plenty actually in ours.
So here's what you're doing with your no, and then you get resentful with your no, is that you are saying yes from your amygdala. Yep. Can you do that? Yep. But you haven't thought about it. You're not using rational thinking to fix that idea. So if someone says to you, can you do this? Say, can I get back to you in 5 minutes? Or I don't have my diary on me. Can I go and have a look at that? What you're giving yourself is that breath to figure out whether or not it's actually feasible for you to do right now. You're taking control over your life. You're instead of just, letting everyone else control you, because everyone else's emergency isn't your emergency, but you're allowing you're allowing it to be your emergency. And sometimes that's around the need to be needed, and that makes you feel good, but it's not serving you. So work out what your priorities are and what's most important for you and your family, because sometimes everyone else is so much more important than the most important things. And then you feel like crap because you haven't set out what's important to you. And so instead, that's how you feel, that no picture, and specifically because that's how you think you're going to feel saying no, but it's actually around, can I get back to you? And then, SMS them or do whatever. So it's just a little thing. Learn the art of saying no. Don't lie. Don't make excuses. Don't over-explain yourself. Just simply decline. I've had to learn that. Like if I don't want to do something, or if I can't do something, I often start to write a note to go, I'm sick, or I'm this, I'm that. And I actually go, Grace, don't lie. Like, because it's your own integrity. You're only up for yourself. So just get used to saying no, and say, it's easier to say no to people that aren't as important. And as you build up the resilience to saying no to those people and you put your boundaries in, you're then better to say the people that you don't really feel like you can't say no to, because you'll have built up that resilience. So being mindful of building up that resilience. So the 5 things that you can do is start small, like one thing. So set, you can go through the planner, or just, break down the things that you need, your head, heart, relationships, body. And you can go back to the beginning of this webinar to have a look at that. Reflect on what you've accomplished. Things might be working and might not be working. You can kind of set this intention and this goal, but then something could happen that means that you're not really meant to go in that direction, and so then you readjust. The other thing is don't be the reason why you don't do something, because when something big comes up, as I said before, it's what you think's going. You have this imagination of what you think's going to happen, as opposed to what actually happens when you move forward. So you just take one step, work out where you need to go from there. One more step, work out where you need to go from there. And then as you get, your steps, you sort of baby steps turn into leaps and then bounds, and that's how you get things. So readjust, and then first steps, and relax. Relax on what you're trying to do. Just notice the season that you're in, notice the place that you're in, and work out what you have accomplished, not what you haven't. And you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. So I think that's it. Has anyone got any questions?
Awesome. Okay, well, while they're thinking about any questions, I am just going to have a bit of a chit chat here around, let me just come back to here. Okay, spotlight video. Okay, what are you seeing now? Can you turn off your share screen?
Probably.
Awesome.
Stop share.
Stop share. Did you do that? Awesome.
Oh my Lord.
Yay. Okay, alrighty. So what I want to show you now is the planners. Okay, so these planners, we've got 2 beautiful colors here, the orange or the gray. And that now a lot of what Grace actually spoke about is actually in here. Some amazing stuff that you can actually workshop. You can sit down and go off, whether it's a cup of coffee somewhere, whether it's under the tree with a pen and paper, and actually gift yourself some time to go through. And I know I had, over the years, generally that weekend between Christmas and New Year's, oftentimes when I've taken the time to really go through these types of exercises, but at any time, just take some time out and have a little look to see. There is so many useful resources in here, getting, what is your body above and beyond, putting your year in place, maybe having a little look at that, setting some of your 90-day goal plans as well. Dream, dare, doodle. I love it. We actually kind of get to just I suppose, think about and just doodle away. And also that dream week that you talked about. What would your week look like? We often talk about that. What would your perfect day be like? and that I might need to put you on mute.
I put
You
it on.
did, okay. So yes, so I think that that's one of the most important things too, is taking some time out to really look at how would you like life to be. And then Grace very beautifully, when she redid it, put in the grids in here as well. So you've got the grid, you can actually be using that as a grid or as a monthly planner, whatever it is that you want. And like she said, it's not dated, so that you can actually start this at any time. So what was the special offer? Well, the special offer was that these were for sale for $55. And we've twisted her arm and pulled her hair and done all those types of things to her. And it is for sale for $39. Okay, so absolute. I know that all of our other planners that haven't got our beautiful Juice Plus and Nutrition Plus out there are at a more expensive price.
Yeah, so that's the 2000. Oh, I don't have my mic, but that's the 2016 price. So that was the original price of the planners.
That's a few years ago, before we went into this beautiful new format as well. So lots of new additions. It's a great offer. So easy enough for you to do, guys. All you need to do is go into your virtual office, whether you're in Australia or New Zealand, pop onto the virtual office, and it's on the Australian one. For New Zealand, it'll actually get posted out from our Australian office here. All of our stock is over here at this point in time. So yes, so go on to your BO under your wholesale. You'll be able to place an order and get that shipped out to you. So really going to encourage you to do that. It's a fantastic offer, it really is. For leaders, it's a great gift for teamies as well. You might have somebody that you kind of think, oh my gosh, that would be an awesome gift to be able to give them. It's an awesome way to be able to recognize some people as well. Cool. Alrighty. Well, Miss Grace, we're just over the top of the hour and that, but such a lot of useful information in there. I encourage you to go back over the replay and get your pen and paper out if you hadn't, kind of thing. Make some little notes around that. There's a couple of great books in there. Habit 1 and 18 Minutes were two of the ones that I saw in there as well. So we always love great recommendations for books or resources. And I also know.
Yeah, so I'll send a follow-up. I'll just turn my mic on quickly, but I'll send a follow-up with a few of the video links that would have been in that presentation, but I couldn't show them. So there's some really lovely, the Darren Hardy, the links to the books that I love that have sort of helped guide this. So I'll send that through with an email. I'll give that to Celine and send it all through with I guess you'll put the planner deal and everything on. So super excited. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks everybody, and enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. God bless. Bye.